Good evening, everyone. Before we start, I want to thank Madeline Day Delpha and Minen Gordon, who are really making this possible in terms of coordinations and technology, and to welcome all of you for making time this evening to join us. Who is us? I'm going to introduce right now. My name is Gannit Ankori. I am the Henry and Lois Foster Director and Chief Curator of the Rose Art Museum, and I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to this evening's conversation with Yu-Wen Wu, a visionary and boundary-breaking artist. Yu-Wen Wu is an interdisciplinary artist whose practice explores the intersections of art, science, and potently addresses themes related to social and cultural transformations in ways that are incredibly poetic and beautiful. Her work is held in numerous private and public collections, including in our area. The Harvard Museums owns a piece, Princeton University Art Museum owns a piece, and of course the Rose Art Museum brought wonderful work, recitations into our permanent collection. And that work is on view currently, and we will discuss it in detail in the second half of today's program. Yu-Wen is an award-winning artist. Recently in 2023, she received the James and Audrey Foster Prize at Boston's Institute of Contemporary Art. And really importantly and relevant to today's discussion, she was an artist in residence at the wonderful Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, where she created a banner for the museum's facade titled, very appropriately, as you will see, Reigning Beauty. And to discuss this project, we are so fortunate to have with us my dear friend and colleague, Pieranna Cavalchini. Pieranna is an internationally renowned curator with experience and knowledge in contemporary art. She is currently the Tom and Lisa Blumenfeld Curator of Contemporary Art at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, where she also directs the Artist in Residence program. And she organized fantastic exhibitions, I think more than 34, and produced beautiful catalogs and artists' books. And I'm so delighted to have the two of you, Pieranna and Yu-Wen, here with us to discuss the work that's at the Gardner now until October 13th. I should also say that it's part of the Bastian Triennial, and we're delighted to have you.
Thank you, Gannit. Thank you, Gannit, for inviting us. And thank you
Yeah.
for giving us the opportunity to talk with Yu-Wen about
Absolutely.
amazing
Thank
work.
you.
Really, it's so great. And so what you see in front of you is the facade that's on the Gardner building. And Yu-Wen, tell us what is this facade? How did you think about Reigning Beauty? How did it come into being?
Well, let me just describe Reigning Beauty a little bit in terms of what it is. It is a 16 by 36 foot facade, and it is a digital collage of cascading flora. You see nasturtiums and violets and hydrangeas and chrysanthemums, of course, and various ferns bursting out from a stormy sky. It's composed of my drawings, many of my watercolor paintings, and also just photographs taken throughout the museum in the courtyard of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum.
It was super interesting that at the beginning you really were painting these images and then
Yes.
decided to go for photography. What made you take that decision?
I was thinking about the scale of, and also how it, when you reprint something like watercolors, you may not be able to pick up the nuances that watercolor brings. And so it was able to use photographs instead and give it much more saturation, much more color, much more contrast for something like a work that's going to be seen from far away.
In fact, the colors are beautiful and the work really speaks to people from afar. It's amazing. What is it about the passing of time at the museum that brought time into focus for you in this Reigning Beauty? Maybe we can look at the next slide too.
Well, I was an artist in residence there for 6 weeks. And so it was such an honor and privilege and such an extraordinary experience. But what really struck me as I stayed and worked and researched during that time was capturing time and experiencing the difference in the movements throughout the palace about time. And we'll go back a little bit and we'll just keep on that. Yeah. So there's this parallel experience for me. For those not familiar with the museum, Isabella Stewart Gardner asked that all objects stay as they lie. And so when you walk into each of the rooms, see the art, it never changes. And yet at the same time,
Everything changes.
everything changes. The people change. The light changes. The as it goes through the architectures, and so that was really impactful for me, experiencing both
Yeah.
parallel situations.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you captured this sense of the double time that happens in the museum. It's really interesting. And the next slide will take us to a question about what did you do at the museum as an artist in resident? What is this slide about?
So the first 2 weeks that I was there, Pieranna, you took me around to the various departments and Tiffany York as well, to just meet all the various the Gardner staff and all the various departments. And here we are in conservation. And so I am here doing some research and just observation. I'm speaking to Holly Solomon about this Japanese gold and silver leaf grapevine screen that's on the second floor. I'm watching Jess Clora's work on the glass Madonna. And Kathleen King shared the Okakura tea set, which was incredible.
It's an amazing piece. It's an incredible gift that Okakura gave to Gardner. It arrived in the mail from Japan and she was just blown away by it. And it's a very, very special gift. And did you spend time with them? Was this something that did you spend a lot of time in the conservation labs?
I did, both looking at fiber, looking at the reparation of some of the, including wallpaper and cloth elements, the tapestries, pieces, and just thinking about and looking at all the different components of how the work is done.
This was the thing that struck me when you came as a resident, how you had this kind of bird's eye view of everything, researching in every direction. And then afterwards, when you came back, you focused on our next slide, which is the archives, right?
Yes, yes. And so what you see here is, you know, being there for 6 weeks and seeing and just being in this space, it was an incredible time to just reflect. But what I started honing in on was thinking about how to represent time in terms of past and present. And so I started thinking very specifically about two elements. One, which is looking into the archives of her travel albums. And here you see that I'm working with Shana McKenna, just looking at all the different, these enormous, look at the scale. You can see that the way the album is
We should say that Gardner traveled extensively, and
yeah,
I think these albums, particularly that you were looking at, may have been from the 1883 trip to Japan and China.
yes,
Because I know
in particular.
yeah, and these books are amazing because at the time it was, there were photography studios where you could go and buy pictures that
Mhm.
had been printed there. And she collected an enormous amount of images and then fashioned these albums on her own. And it's kind of fascinating focus on her travels and the things she looked at and the things that interested her, you know, including plants,
including
is-
plants.
which is something you focused on, and you extrapolated some of them from the albums and it included in the facade, which I think is amazing. So you have this cascading plants that are in part historic plants of the
Mhm,
past
mhm.
from 1883, and then contemporary plants, which you photographed in the courtyard. And that takes us to the next slide, which is
And,
amazing.
and here we are in the courtyard, and also the greenhouse. And it was such a privilege to just kind of hang out with the horticulturist, Erica Rumley, who's brilliant, and just working with them. The only way I could get into the courtyard was to volunteer, and so that's what I did. I stepped in and started deadheading the bellflowers during bellflower season, and you can see that it was such an incredible space to be surrounded with all these lovely natural plants.
Yeah, and you were fascinated by the many different types of flowers. You also went to Hingham. I
Mhm.
don't know if the next slide also has more plants that, yes, oh, they're close-ups.
Right, and these are specific chrysanthemums that I used in the facade.
Yeah, and the chrysanthemum period is really right now. So
Exactly.
for those of you who want to visit the museum, you will see a plethora of chrysanthemums for the next couple of weeks, and they get bigger and bigger as time goes by. No, they're amazing.
These are
Yeah.
enormous, and if you go back one more slide, you'll see you see how the chrysanthemums are on a single stalk. And this is a very specific cultivation that is done originally from Japan, but that Erica and her team have been, they have to snip it every single day and train it to be this single-stemmed, gorgeous, huge flower.
Yeah, and it
So
takes a long time, right?
it does. It takes all year for them to do this.
And that's one of the things I think that struck you about the museum is watching these people, the team of horticulturalists work in the museum slowly and consistent. It's very
Mhm.
mesmerizing, meditative, no, in a certain way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Loved working with them.
Yeah, and I love the effect of the cascading plants, you know, the flowers, and how you were able to capture movement in this piece while it's still a single photo, it's a single image. But that's an amazing feat. I think
Thank you.
that's really interesting. And the next slide.
If I may, I just found are these photographs that you took, Yuen?
Yeah.
Of
Yes.
course.
So I found it like really, really fascinating to discover what you discovered during your residency in the piece. So the piece looks totally different and very contemporary when you see it in the facade. But now this kind of journey that you're taking us on, where we find out how you found everything and how it relates to the past and the present and the future and to the life cycles and time, and the fragility and resilience of flowers. There's always this poetry and power in everything you do. And as you said, reigning beauty. It's just absolutely stunning. And I think the next slide that you asked for, Pieranna, oh, this one.
Yes, this is fantastic. It's the studio, and it gives you the idea of, you know, all the designs and drawings that UN did, and also the proportions of the pieces, because we did a lot of proofs to get the right color
Mhm.
that she
Mhm.
wanted. And you can see there a tiny section of a giant, because it is, as you said, 36 feet tall, so it's quite high. And
Quite high.
yeah, and we did two proofs, if I remember correctly.
That's right. So on the upper left-hand corner, these are the things that I started to collect. Many of the plants that they were taking and removing because they had passed or were not going to be shown anymore ended up in my studio. And so I started sketching and thinking about, these various shapes and textures and colors. And then they became just drawings and sketches, and I was putting them on the wall. They're just collaged pieces here and there. And then I was also pulling images from the collection, thinking about screens, thinking about objects that was in the collection that really inspired me to think about how to formally construct this facade. So you see these various elements in there, and then on the lower right is lower right middle is my studio, and you can see how large that facade is compared to a flat file, for instance.
And the other,
Amazing.
and the final slide, I believe it's the final slide, we see the facade again. And I just wanted to mention that, which we'll talk about later as well, it's so interesting that you chose to include also a scholar rock in the facade,
Mhm.
which is really a symbol of meditation, and it's very much present in Asian gardens. And I thought that that's the idea of stopping and looking at the work and thinking about the vulnerability of the flowers and the cascading of these flowers and how nature is so vulnerable today. And you were thinking a lot about that. So
Thinking a lot about that. And having the rocks sit at the very bottom to anchor the earth, and then you have all these other elements coming down from the sky. It really does create this tension of precarity and fragility.
I wanted to also point to this image that is so beautiful. I'm so glad you included it. It made me change the introduction to introduce you as boundary breaking as well as brilliant and wonderful artist, because there is this kind of frame that you kind of disregard and you break the frame, you go beyond it. And even the way that you've photographed some of the photographs when you're looking at the archives and you see things breaking out. And I
and
think
may I say also the beauty of how you arrange these photographs, because all these slides that you are looking at, it's actually Yu-Wen who has placed them together, and they're just so poetic and beautiful.
exactly, it's kind of um, almost like a mosaic of your thought process. And this is a video that I will share.
So
Again,
this is a draft that I started thinking about for the facade. And here it's just CGI. They're not the plants that I've ultimately landed with, but just taking simple shapes and forms and textures and thinking about what does it feel like when there's this particular speed coming down, then volume and textures and colors. And so it's just a simple draft of movement and falling and accumulating. Um, I,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gorgeous.
it's beautiful, and it also they remind us of flowers and stars and slow
The
motion movement.
constellations, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And here's the rock that you discussed that
Oh,
anchors it in a beautiful way and a close-up. But these beautiful specimens that you chose and the clouds,
Hmm.
it's
impending
incredible.
storm, no?
Hmm.
Maybe, there's always the beauty and the potential for them to be past their prime and kind of um rot, or it has the memento mori, the kind of still life that Vanitas paintings has, but it's something else. It doesn't follow that tradition. It just
And if
conjures
I
up
may
some
add,
of those
the other thing,
metaphors.
it's a public art project, right? And you, of course, are out in the in nature. And there in this image, there's a blue sky, but often there are clouds. And so there's this
Mhm.
conversation with light that goes on with this work. I think it's amazing how you captured light here, which in a
Thank
way
you.
also, because you thought a lot about light in the museum as well, because light is
Yeah.
so important to this collection.
And
So
I spent a lot of time outside just watching the way the light moved
yeah,
across the glass of the building, about how light was shown at different times of day and how it would affect a piece, let's say, when it's on there. And so these are the selections that this is the sky I finally chose that I thought was um it had this feeling of drama and
drama.
tension and yeah, and so it was good.
It's really incredible. And did you want to talk about the technique? What the final? I mean, it's you led us through your journey, a kind of process
Mhm.
that we have to thank Pieranna for inviting you to do a residency at the Gardner. I mean, what could be
Absolutely. Thanks.
better? Go through the gardens and the archives and work with all the people and with Pieranna. But after you did your research and you decided certain things, you did the kind of simulation of the slow moving
Mhm.
flowers coming down. I think you took the picture of the light changing
Mhm.
with time. Uh, to do something outdoors and durable, very different than doing something for a museum or a gallery. What did you guys come up with?
Well, in order for this to translate and be printed, it has to be done digitally. And so I worked mostly on Photoshop to pull all the different elements together. Um,
Resolution is very, very high to get it this quality of printing.
yeah, it's a very high resolution. And so I had to throw a lot of flowers and photographs out because they were not sharp enough. And I say that too about the drawings because there's too many nuances that wasn't going to translate into a digital format. So I ended up doing more photography rather than just the drawings. But a lot of the greens are done in drawings. I mean, in paintings, in watercolor paintings, because you didn't need as much of the color nuance in that. You just needed more form, and the color itself was important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful piece. And very
Really,
sad to see it go.
well, everyone has until October 13th to see it, and it's outside, so you can just, camp out there. There's a little park right across. Any other thoughts, Pieranna, Yu-Wen?
Again, it's been such a joy working with UN, and I always think, the residency program is never a one-shot deal. I always see it as, residents returning, it's cumulative. So I really hope UN comes back often and does more research. And
Well, I have many more ideas that's still gestating, so thank you for that invitation.
And actually, I think that in a very, very meaningful and intentional way, your research following Mrs. Gardner's trips to Eastern Asia,
Mm,
picking flowers, looking at things, it is a kind of continuity. And the other aspect that I wanted to say was
journey.
something, right?
yeah.
And I know you did a show, Pieranna, about the travels, the travels of Mrs. Gardner.
Yeah, the museum did an exhibition on Gardner's travel albums, and I think it was in 23, and
Mm,
beautiful catalog of these albums that is on that if you go to the website and go to the shop, you can download it. I mean,
right.
sell buy
Yeah.
it, but I mean, yeah. So there's been a lot of thinking and thought around these travel albums
But
for
even when you did the Betty Saar, it was around the commonality of their travel.
yeah.
So it's part of and
Came
she
in
was
the
also
90s. I
seeking
spoke about
beauty,
it. Yeah.
right? She
Hmm.
was also seeking beauty. The other thing that I want to just highlight and lift is something that you said, Pieranna, about the current moment when plants and the planet
Mhm.
are not being treated in a honoring way, are not being honored and are being destroyed. So this insistence on showing the beauty of nature is very powerful and important, I think.
Yeah, and encouraging people to pause and to really think about it.
Mm. So thank you. And we're going to move on to the second piece by Yu-Wen Wu that you can all see in the Boston area. At the Rose, we're really fortunate to own a piece called Recitations that we saw at Praise Shadows Gallery and had to bring into the permanent collection. It was actually chosen by the Sam Hunter committee. They look at art all year and they choose artists that they think they really, really want. And of course, I presented it to them and I was thrilled that we could bring this work into our permanent collection. It's on view now as part of an exhibition. You see part of this exhibition. It's a group show titled Fabricated Imaginaries Crafting Art. It brings together over 30 works from around the globe that challenge categories, dissolve hierarchies, and expand our understanding of what art is, what art can be. And the works use unusual materials. In the case of Yu-Wen, it's Taiwanese tea leaves, for example. You see Chrysophily, he uses elephant dung. You see Nick Cave, he uses other elements. Jeffrey Gibson and Marie Watt used different beads. And, the works are very different and relate to different cultures and visual vocabularies, but they all occupy a kind of liminal space between art and craft, between tradition and innovation, and actually really negate those boundaries, insist on artists' freedom to choose and do what they will. You see on the right here, Yu-Wen's piece, Recitations. In the foreground, Jean Shin's beautiful installation called Alterations, where she uses the cuffs of pants that needed to be shortened. She's a Korean American artist. And Yoko Ono's cut piece. Looking at the other side, you see Yu-Wen's piece near Eva Hesse, Theaster Gates, Chihiro Shiota, and Judy Chicago up here. So many, many different artists that have this commonality of like fabricated imaginaries, different materials, and blurring boundaries, as we said, boundary breaking. So here is both the way that Recitations is seen when you look at it, and this is looking down at the base with the spiral. And you see the components are these balls made up of tea leaves, some gilded in different ways, some not, and put together with red string. And I hope we can talk about all these things. But maybe first to talk about the process of using the tea leaves.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Thank you. I'm so honored to be in this exhibition, Gannit, and to be part of the Rose collection. It's really something. So
Well, the honor is ours, Yu-Wen, we're very lucky to have you.
yeah. Well, just a little bit back. I'm really interested in materials. I'm interested in how I can transform materials. My practice really focuses a lot on movement and time and transformation and cultural identity. And through materials, I try to express these ideas. In this particular body of work, I'm drawn to materials that have a cultural resonance for me. I was born in Taiwan. I came at a very early age, and still so much of my storyline rests in my heritage. And so here I'm using you see tea in this case. This happens to be in Alishan, Taiwan. It is the highest mountain, and it's like champagne. It's not Alishan tea unless it's over a certain meters. So this is very important. And so I have had been very fortunate to be able to gather a lot of Alisan tea, both from growers here as well as my aunt and family in Taiwan who give me their post-brewed teas. So they'll drink it and then they'll dry it for me and then they mail it by boat to me. So it's really a community process in many ways to be able to make this work from everyone's
Yeah, and talking about
what.
transformation, the fact that we see how they grow the tea leaves and
Mhm.
how then it's you pick the tea leaves, you dry them, you heat them up, you mush them with your hands, it's all very tactile. And
It
then
is.
your family drinks it, and then they dry it, and then they send it, and then you transform it into works of art that we can enjoy. So that lineage, that genealogy, adds a lot of many layers of meaning to these works.
It does.
And once you get that incredible tea, you do something even more extraordinary.
So, yeah, recitations is actually has came from a whole body of work called intentions, which we will look at later. But in this case, this is 108 orbs based on the mala beads of my grandmother. And when I was young, she used to place me on her lap and we would recite many of her prayers. And she's a Taoist, so it was much more about looking at the universe and her prayers to the universe and for herself, rather than just uh, reciting, just they're more about reminders of one's intentions.
Mhm.
And so this became recitations became something that was really when I remembered many of her prayers. And some of them are very weighty. And so I started to think about the weight, how large these orbs should be represented. And so you can see these various sizes in that, as well as some of them are the natural tea colors, some of them are um, only been coated lightly, and then others are deeply coated with many, many layers of gilding, gold gilding.
So that really, again, you say reigning beauty. There's so much meaning and they're so tactile, but you never give up that beauty, which is I think our way into it, that's the first thing we feel, and then we start thinking, oh, it's tea. And some people come in like they kneel and they want to smell it if they can still be, it's a really visceral response to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the shades of gold and the natural color, they're so powerful because you can see again a transformation process. It's another way of thinking about time, that things change, right?
Yes. And the storylines. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you use this very specific red string
Hmm.
here and in some of the other works that we will show. Here it gives it, and for the installation, we received very specific details that it's hung from 3 places on the wall. So the whole way it hangs is, it's a necklace, but it's also prayer beads. It also reminds us, the different weights,
Hmm.
the connection. When this one little visitor came and thought it was the sun and the planets or something. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
again, there's so many different, it's very suggestive. Um, it's open, but also the red string, I think it has very, a lot of significance for you and in terms of your past. Do you want to see the next slide?
Well, do you want to,
No.
yeah, we can talk about the red string and then we'll see it later on in
Okay.
intentions, which is really wrapped. But you can see that the red string is it's a link, it's a binding between each of the orbs. And the red string in my work really harks back to my grandmother tying a red cord around each of the newborns and saying prayers. And so, the red cord, which is in many other traditions as well, is really about lineage, about family ties. And so here we're binding all the different prayers in red.
Right, right. You also told me that your grandmother had a way of inserting red strings
Mhm.
as a kind of
Rebellion.
rebellion. Could you talk about that?
Well, so during the occupation, she had to, Japan's occupation, she also had to, um, she was a seamstress when part-time, when she could. She has six children. So my father is one of six children. And so she would sew, but to repair, and to mend, people's clothing. She wasn't making new clothing, she was repairing. And so in that, many times she would take a red string, her favorite red string, and insert it into a hem so that it's not seen. But it's also her mark of saying, I was here. I helped you. I mended your shirt, your pants.
Well, I find that incredibly moving, and also that it's almost like she's an artist, she's
Mhm,
making,
mhm,
she's a crafting.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, her mending was beautiful. She had
yeah,
really wonderful sewing skills. When she came to the United States and lived with us for a little while, I was about 12 to 14 at that time, and I learned pattern making. She would make me dresses. They were extremely unique, and I still have one or two of them.
wow.
I can't fit them, but they look great.
So do you see yourself as like, do you see her as an artist and some of her, you are reusing the red string as a kind of continuity?
Yes, yes. And I think I can continue to tell the story in so many ways with this red string.
Can we talk a little bit about the spiral?
So instead of closing the beads in prayer, the mala beads are usually enclosed, and there's 108 of them in a circular form. I've decided to open them and to think about them as open intentions, and that they're really directed more towards the future and your personal intentions and how to address your life and your future rather than to close it and keep it with only a religious, instead of just keeping it within a religious, recitations, and so to speak. And so this is more open for you to think about where you are at in your life.
I love that. So when I titled the show, and it went through so many iterations and so many titles,
Mhm, mhm,
I came up with fabricated imaginaries. And one of the things that I wrote in the intro text was that, of course, it's about the imagination of individual artists that they fabricate things. Of course, the word fabric is also there because a lot of people are using string and colors and fabrics and other things that are not paint or bronze or something like that. But I was also thinking of social imaginaries, the
mhm,
things that bind us together. And for me, this is both. And a lot of the works have both, but it talks to your collective identity and where you came from and as an immigrant child coming from this long lineage of well, your grandmother, a maker. We'll talk about your grandfather soon as well, but also the beads, the prayer beads that are part of the social imagination of Taoism, of your community. The tea is also part of lifestyle. Of course,
mhm.
they had to drink the tea, but it's also the individual that finds her way to interact with that. So it's your imagination and it's your heritage and the social imagination as well, linked here in such a beautiful way.
Thank you. And for the viewer, for them to interpret to what they need to interpret.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
people come up with so many different. It resonates with them. It
Mhm.
does. It does. So acculturation speaks, for me, it speaks directly to the immigrant experience. And as an immigrant myself, I know that there's the push and pull. On the one hand, people want you to belong and to become like everyone else, and you really can't because something holds you back. And
Mm.
so maybe we can talk about this incredible work. And again, the beauty is what captures you when you come and you see it. I think these are the images from
The
uh,
Foster Prize,
this is
yeah.
from the Foster
Yeah.
Prize of the
Yeah.
ICA. The one in back of me, I think I took it a Praise Shadows when it was
Mhm.
shown in Praise Shadows. But let's talk about this because these are also plants. Some of them are teas, right?
Yes. So these are clusters of Taiwanese tea leaves and New England plants, such as boxwoods and azaleas and maple stems, grapevines, rhododendron leaves, the tiny ones. Again, these are post-brew tea sent by my family in Taiwan, and some of them are dipped in gold. And here, gold has a historical reference. It references the California gold rush when the early Chinese immigrants came. It references the metaphor of the streets paved in gold, signifying the American dream of prosperity that many Americans pursue. And actually, when I came at the age of 7, I actually thought the streets would be paved in gold. Nobody corrected me. And then I came and landed in New York, and I was like, oh, not quite.
Oh.
So, um, and then, yeah, it's the so many of these stems are some of them are gilded and some of them are left ungilded, as is in the tea orbs, so that you see the natural element of it. Um,
Mm.
Can I
mhm.
ask how long how much time did you spend collecting all these specimens?
Um, I I do a lot of walking. I love walking. So, and my husband says, "Oh, you spend a lot of time looking down and not looking up," but because I'm always finding objects and things that are just of interest to me and looking at plants and the natural world. It's just part of what I do. And so I'm always collecting. I'm always looking. And so if you ask me, how long this is, it takes a long time to make this work. So the plants have to be collected, they have to be dried and pressed, and then go through many, many, many layers of gilding.
Right. And I would say that,
Mhm.
you're a botanist as well. You are collecting and you're looking at them and you're blending. So for me, it was also, again, first of all, beautiful. Second of all, maybe I'm sure people notice that some of them are organized in a grid, almost looks like
Mhm.
writing up and
Yeah,
down.
much more of a calligraphic feel.
Yeah, and some are wild and they look more like they might be in nature.
Mm.
But they're stunningly beautiful. The
Thank
first thing I said was, I want a brooch,
Yeah.
I want a brooch, I want a necklace, they're so beautiful. And of course, then I was thinking, you're putting together the tea leaves that come from the home country
Mhm.
with the native plants, and you're trying to make a composition where they all belong. So
Mhm.
there's always a kind of metaphor beneath the just beautiful composition.
To me, they
Um,
seem like they're dancing together somehow.
There's a lot of movement as well. Yeah.
that is true. A lot of movement and a lot of beauty. and how natural for you to then gravitate towards the gardener to see her
Absolutely.
press leaves, and then to go to the greenhouse and to the patio where such beautiful flowers live and do something with the flowers that are there. I wanted to again also a nod to our neighbors at the ICA, where I already said that you won the Foster Prize and you had a wonderful exhibition. And these are works. Here you see the beautiful leaves, but here you have a different treatment of orbs and the red strings. And I thought it would be really interesting for people to see this.
Yeah, and here the process is a little different. The reciting comes in the wrapping. So as you're wrapping, you're thinking about your intentions. And so again, there's 8 strands here and there's 108 orbs. And again, it's suspended from the ceiling, it's open, and then it spirals down to start closing and thinking about what your intentions are.
Mm. So we talked about a spiritual element, a
Mhm.
meditative element,
Mhm.
almost religious element, a ritualistic element in your work, both in the making and then the product also kind of resonates with a kind of spirituality. Is that how you think about it as well?
Mm. It is. And it's also so much about memory. It's so much about each story, each orb telling a story. Um, and it's a quiet moment for me when I make these. And as well, it's restive.
Mhm. They remind me of my grandmother's knitting and how she used to take
Mhm.
the wool and make balls out of that as well. And if we're talking about memory, we talked a lot about the matrilineal lineage. We talked about your grandmother. I thought another stunning body of work, artifact that you showed at Praise Shadows, and are these stones. I think I have 2 slides. Yeah, these 2 slides of artifact 1, 2, and Scholar's Rock 1. That's similar to the one that's in the Gardner piece. Here I wanted to show the cracks both in the rock and in the base are filled with the gold, and they almost look like veins or something. They're so beautiful. But you also laid them out, the scholars or the philosophers' rocks. But again, they have something that relates not just to a static culture, but also to your childhood and to memory. Um, I don't know if you think it's nostalgia or not, but can you talk to us about your grandfather and how it relates to this body of work?
So again, walking, collecting, looking, and here we are. As a child, I collected on many rocks along the way with my grandparents when we took our evening walks. And they created this shelf for me to place these small treasures that I would come home back with. And by taking something that's so ordinary that you pick up on the street, for instance, and placing it on a shelf, it suddenly is imbued with such importance and such it has a different place in your life and in your viewing of what that means. And so I think maybe perhaps all my collecting of natural plants comes from that time and from childhood and thinking about, what is the significance once you've selected this as something that you put on your shelf. And yeah, so I've had rocks, large and small, large and small for over 10 years, and they're just sitting in my studio corner. I didn't know what to do with them. I wasn't ready to part with them because everyone situates and establishes a foundation for the geography, a location where I found them, sometimes, and the place, the time, and memory. So all those things I wasn't ready to part with until one day I just decided I'm going to make scholar rocks with these.
Mm,
And so then I've now placed it on a different kind of shelf, so to speak. They are now individually placed on a pedestal of their own.
mm. So there is a scholar, Ellen Dissanayake, who a long time ago, maybe
Mm.
20 years ago, wrote the book, What is Art For?
Mm.
And her approach is biobehavioral, not art historical or anything. And she tries to define art as making special. And she talks about different cultures. She did a lot of her field work in Sri Lanka and in other areas where she says, you take a rock that looks, or a shell or
Mm.
something that, and you make it special. You select it and you put it on a pedestal. And then you start thinking of its meaning. And so I always, when I saw your rocks, I could really, really remember both the childhood
Mm.
instinct to collect things that you think are special, whether it's a button you find someplace or a
Mm.
seashell or something like that. But then to continue as an adult and understand the beauty and like your little interventions, like the gold veins here, or the type of pedestal, the type of wood. I mean, everything is so especially made, very, very carefully made. And the feeling is that it makes us see things differently. So you have this gift of
Thank
using
you.
simple materials and making them so special and so meaningful and building building meaning, making meaning, and then opening it up to the audience to also have those experiences. So I want to say that these are two very different works, an outdoor piece and an indoor piece made from different materials, but they they all both of them kind of reflect who you are and your way of looking at the world, your way of perceiving nature and movement and um, the time. I mean, I'm thinking of counting the beads,
Mm.
and they're just stunning works of art. I want to say again that Reigning Beauty will be up until October 13th. Run to see it. Recitations is going to be in the museum until May 31st, 2026. Don't wait until the last minute to see it. And I want to thank you, Yu-Wen, and you, Pieranna, and I think we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. I'm looking if there are questions in the chats, or am I supposed to see the questions elsewhere? Q&A, I see the Q&A. Ann Stewart is asking a question. Photo lamination and attached to big exterior. So there is a question about the facade piece. Is
Mhm.
it a laminated photo and attached to the building? Would you like to take that, Pieranna or Yu-Wen?
Would you like?
Pirana, you know that this is, you know, maybe you should talk about it because this has been a technique that you've used for since what, 2018? No, 20, it's been up
2012.
2012, yeah.
This was this idea of having a facade on the building this way was part of Renzo Piano's project for the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was to have a space on the facade of the museum that would be dedicated to art and not to advertising, because normally banners are for advertising. And this was the idea of really having a space for public art
Mm-hmm.
that people can, visit and look at. They don't really have to enter the museum to do so. Hopefully they'll want to, but it's something that they can enjoy just passing by. And it's a vinyl, so it's a particular vinyl. And if you look at the vinyl before it's imprinted, it has lots of little holes because this piece is so tall, and it needs because of the wind shear. You need to be able to, so air has to pass through it. I mean, you can't really see it when you look at it, but that's what, and I think it also makes it very beautiful because somehow it 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 fits into the building. No, there's something, it doesn't fight the building. It just becomes part of the building.
Mm.
And it's in 4 sections, and they're printed this way, and then they're hung from the
Right.
top and fall. And if you come on the 14th, when it comes down, you see it coming down and you see the next one going up, which is also a very interesting moment.
Yeah, it is. Because
Yeah.
at some point there's like, you have two panels of one work and then two panels of a new work coming in. It's really interesting.
There are two more questions that I want to get to, but I love the idea that Renzo Piano from the beginning left this place for art, a banner for art, and not for the capitalist system or consumerism. That's incredible. Ilona Anderson says, this is not a question so much as an observation. There is strong connection between Yu-Wen's work and Anne Westman's work. They both have this wonderful reverence for natural objects. So that's nice. There's a question from Saori Kanayama. Does the artwork have the fragrance of tea leaves? It originally does. It kind of
Mhm.
wears out.
Mhm.
Maybe we should add something to it, Yu-Wen. Maybe we should add tea essence to it.
When it first reaches me, it's so fragrant. And
Mm,
I would love to do an installation sometime. Just let's just have the leaves out and everyone can just enjoy it.
love
We can
it.
sit in there.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I think the final question, because we're almost out of time, Sarah Arcada is asking, how do you find the balance between intervening with the materials and maintaining the integrity of the materials? That's beautiful.
That's a great question. And it's hard to completely answer because every material speaks to me different. So for instance, the rock that was mended with like in a kintsugi method, which is a Japanese method of mending, that particular rock called to me. That rock said, I need to be repaired. And so I started repairing it in that way and made a stand that would continue this repair line. And so yes, but the other rocks didn't call in that way. As a matter
Mhm.
of fact, they had a whole different conversation with me saying, okay, put me together with something else. So I can't completely answer. It's not an easy answer, but th it was a great question.
And it varies, you know. I
Yes.
think you have a lot of, you respond to materials.
Mhm, mhm,
I also want to say something about the tea leaves. When the recitation, it looks like very solid, but when you look at it, it's also very fragile. And a lot of, there's some loose tea that every time people, when we installed it, we were so scared. But, there's always that the natural materials. Yeah,
mhm,
the natural materials. And there are people here who are thanking you for sharing your creative process.
mhm.
And I too thank you for sharing your creative process and sharing your amazing work with the Gardner and with the Rose Art Museum and with the Triennial. And I want to thank my beloved colleague, Pieranna, for all the wonderful work that you do, and for
you.
joining us today and sharing and giving Yu-Wen this amazing residency that sounds like a dream.
Truly, truly.
And
Yes.
really just
But also, it's so wonderful that we have these two works up at the same time, no? And
yeah,
really
yeah,
celebrating Yuen's work in this way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yu-Wen is a Boston icon. We really, really respect your work and love it, and it enriches our communities in so many ways. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope to see you at the Gardner and the Rose. And thank you so much, Yu-Wen. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Gannit. Thank you, Pieranna. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
both.
for having me.
It's so great.